You are listening to the USDN on the DFPN.
It's a trap!
What is up, everyone, and welcome to the United States Department of Nerds, where we are for the people, by the people, and of the people. Every generation has its action heroes, the soldiers who never quit, the specialists with impossible missions, the teams that stood between order and chaos when the odds seemed impossible. From Saturday morning cartoons to blockbuster action films, to the pages of comic books, these larger-than-life heroes have inspired countless creators to imagine what comes next. Tonight, we're stepping into that tradition. Our guests have taken everything they love about military action, elite strike teams, and cinematic storytelling and forged it into their own creator-owned universe, one built from the ground up through passion, perseverance, and the power of crowdfunding. With Collision Force number 2 now live, soon to be live on Kickstarter, we'll discuss the origins of the series, the partnership that brought these two gentlemen together, the transition from screenwriting to comics, and the realities of independent publishing, and why action still deserves a place in today's shelves. Please join me and welcome the co-creators of Collision Force, Joe Kazmer, Jarrod Burris, to the USDN Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, the Council of Nerds is now in session. Joe, Jarrod, welcome to the council.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. It's quite an intro. Love it.
Appreciate it. Everybody gets their own special intro when they come to the USDN. But let's start at the beginning, because every creator's journey is a little bit different. Before Collision Force was ever an idea, what first sparked your love for comics and storytelling? Was there like a book, a creator, a moment that kind of made you think, I want to create something like this? And Joe, we'll start with you on that one.
I wrote my first story when I was probably in first grade, which was a G.I. Joe story with little comics.
Oddly enough.
And so I've always loved, G.I. Joe, heroes, writing, been a writer pretty much my entire life. And things like G.I. Joe, Transformers, when I was a kid, Batman, Spider-Man, and then later, Garth Ennis' big influence, The Boys, and Preacher, comics like that, Conan, I love it all. Superheroes to crime to things like Conan to military to Criminal by Ed Brubaker. I love the gamut. A good comic's a good comic to me.
Hey, that's a wide berth of enjoyment there. How about you, Jarrod?
So I would say the thing that set me off as a kid was the intersection of The Punisher being released in the early 90s on VHS. And
I remember that.
Yeah, and so it was like, I'd pick up a comic book here and there at the supermarket, some G.I. Joes to go with my toys, some Batman to go with the Burton movie. And then me and my cousins, we ran the Punisher movie, and they had been getting some they were regular collecting at Phantom of the Attic in Butler, Pennsylvania. And I was curious about this Punisher movie we watched, and at the end of it, like, the Punisher has his own series and it comes out every every month, and there's all these other Punisher books. So I go to Phantom of the Attic, and I pick up the Punisher Summer Special #2, which is a really wild cover, and I read it, and I was indoctrinated into the world of comic books. I then had a pull list, and I was reading Punisher comics and then X-Men comics, and then when Image kicked in, it was all about Extreme for me, Youngblood Prophet, all the Rob Liefeld stuff. That was my guy. He still is. Love him. And then, college, it was Ennis popped into Max, and that just like blew my mind. And still reading X-Men and Spider-Man at that point. And then I moved to LA, and it's more sporadic in my collecting. And then when Cartoonist Kayfabe popped up, that really like blew my mind out and got totally recontextualized my childhood. And that's kind of around the time that Joe had this wild idea to go back on an idea we had and start a comic book.
Yeah, Jarrod and I bonded in college. We met each other at the University of Pittsburgh. He had written a story, a pretty gruesome story about some stuff going on in prison. And afterwards, he said, "Hey, what's up, man?" And we bonded love of comic books, pro wrestling, action movies. Yeah, and it's all been uphill from there.
A true bromance.
I like it. There's nothing wrong with a good bromance. I'm here for a good bromance any day of the week. And actually, I talked to a lot of people in bromances, and they happen to write comic books. Though it's just become a part of the thing here at the USDN. We celebrate bromances. I mean, so one of the biggest things that immediately caught my eye when y'all sent this over to me is y'all described Collision Force as R-rated G.I. Joe, which I always felt like we needed an R-rated G.I. Joe, even though the comic book never geared that direction. But a G.I. Joe R-rated movie would be some top-notch stuff. I mean, what was the original conversation that led to Collision Force? Was there a moment where you both said, you know what, nobody's making anything like this over the top, with G.I. Joe like action? So, like, what was that for y'all?
It was kind of like in college, we were tossing around myths. Like we'd stay up all night watching Dario Argento movies, and then also like really extreme action movies, which I'm sure you love, Stone Cold and all those sorts of movies. So we started thinking, who's an epic hero who exists who's never been talked about? And we started formulating a plan for Lars Bowman, who is the ultimate super soldier, super violent, insane, and hyper patriotic. And we went over this just back and forth. And at that point, we thought of it like, imagine if this was a movie. Imagine if this guy was great, like crashing through the screen, destroying enemies of the country, and just showing no mercy at all. And we just had a blast going over that. And then I'll kick it to Joe, post-pandemic, where he had some money from betting on USC, where he decided to take it to the next level.
Yeah, during COVID, those gambling companies were just throwing around money. And, I did all right and had a little bit. As it turned out, not nearly enough to create a comic book. But it was enough to get started. And I said, Jarrod, hey, buddy, why don't we create a comic based on one of your screenplays? He goes, oh, no, let's do Collision Force. All right. And then, so we started with Lars Bowman, this super soldier who was born from a twisted Soviet program, and then rescued by his what would be his adopted father to fight communism and terrorism in the late 80s, early 90s. And then from there we forged a team of who do we want to see on this special missions force, this elite strike force. So we created all these characters. Jarrod has mythology and a background for this villain kind of manipulating everything behind the scenes, and this evil force who's been fighting with Lars, or in Lars' background for years, is now manipulating kind of like your villain of the issue to try to fight Collision Force. And it's a great venue to have a ton of action. We love 80s and 90s action movies and comics. We love G.I. Joe. We love military strike teams, over the top violence, and something that we kind of saw that was missing from the comic book market. And tell me if I'm wrong. I don't really know of a high octane action team comic that doesn't have a degree of sci-fi. So this is like kind of like maybe your Fast Five-ish level or Bad Boys 2 level of violence and reality, but we're not going sci-fi. I mean, I love G.I. Joe. I read it every month, but there's a ton of sci-fi in it, and I want something that is real.
Yeah.
And that's what we're working on. So I don't know if there's anything out there like that, but
I can't think of anything like, they all tend to have or lean into sci-fi at one point or another. I mean, G.I. Joe has laser guns. You got real explosions and real bullets and real action. And dude, I love it. Anything that has a good explosion scene automatically like wins me over. I don't know when we went away from a good explosion in both movies and comic books and just in general, like a good explosion.
Yes, it was bad. A bad moment in history to turn away from explosions. We're bringing it back, baby.
I love it, dude. And I can't remember which one it was last night who was like, "Hey, this is going to be a blast." I'm like, "Yeah, even the thumbnail is a blast because the thumbnail is just like big explosions." And then I just shoved the collision force right in the middle of it. I was like, I'm playing with it. I'm like, right in the middle of the explosion. That's perfect. They wouldn't want it any other way.
Beautiful.
So it was a lot of fun making that thumbnail. I'm not even gonna lie. Like I'm getting used to making my own shit in Canva and on thumbnails, and yeah, dude, that was a lot of fun to make. And then trying to mix it up. So yeah, it was a lot of fun on that one. So the original conversation that led to Collision Force, was there kind of like, actually no, not that question. I'm sorry. Oh, world building. So did y'all kind of build this world first, the team, the characters, or were y'all all just kind of like all at the same time, just mishmashing this together?
We spent once Joe threw down the gauntlet. We probably spent 6 months, 7 months going back and forth building out the world. We have a 50-issue arc, but we like every issue to be self-contained in its own story. And if we're blessed enough to get to the issue 50, you'll see where it's all going, which is pretty insane. But we have it all mapped out. It's very detailed with our central villain who lurks in the background, like Joe was saying. And Lars's background is also more complex than it would seem, just from the out. With him being a super macho, violent guy, it gets pretty deep and unorthodox in ways. If we can get to that point, I think people are going to enjoy it.
Yeah, with issue 1, I kind of threw down a gauntlet to Jarrod of, I read, go ahead, go back, read the Fantastic Four #1. You get the origin of the Fantastic Four in 3 pages, something like that. It's like 3 or 4.
Yeah, it's something
pages.
weird. It's like 3 or 4 pages.
Yeah.
Right. It's not 12 issues or 24 issues. And like, let's keep moving. Throw down the origin of Collision Force. It's in 2 double-page spreads. Boom. There everything you need to know about Collision Force. Jump in. It's right there. Of course, we'll dive in a little deeper, as Jarrod's saying, during the course of the series. But, we have what you need to know from the outset.
So these types of team books, they kind of live and die by chemistry. I know, Jarrod, you said you're a big fan of the Liefeld stuff, and he's a big team guy. He seems like he's always putting together a team in his comic books. So they live and die by chemistry. How do you make sure every member of Collision Force has a distinct personality and purpose instead of just simply filling a role on the squad like you may see in some other tamer action books with a lot less explosions?
I think you have to know them as people. And so Joe has identified a few of those people, and I have a few of those characters in my head. And if you can think of them as regular people and identify their traits, it becomes very easy to see the dynamics of who doesn't like each other, where the drama is coming from. And it's nice to be able to lean on Joe for certain characters where he knows them really well, and I know other characters very well. And so when they start colliding, that's where the drama comes in. That's where the fun team dynamic happens. And there are certain fault lines in the team that and the faults start spreading as the issues go on. And the binding force is Lars Bowman, who loves all of his teammates quite a bit, and not in an ironic fashion, which is kind of the
you got to put that out there.
Yeah, in a non-ironic fashion, Lars does not. He looks at as a team, which normally if you had a character like Lars, he'd be a bit of a cutthroat, not caring. Again, a Garth Ennis type of fashion, where everyone's just kind of expendable, laugh at the guys dying and not really care. No, Bowman cares about his team first and foremost, and he's not going to let anything happen to them. And maybe he goes a little bit too far in that. And that's the dynamic of Lars Bowman that gets interesting.
Joe, what's your thoughts?
When I was creating, certain members of Collision Force, Jarrod had some team members in mind, and then I went about kind of filling out the team. And the way I did it is just kind of thinking about, well, I know this person, and I can take that person and dial them up a few notches and make them a little cooler, make them, an expert sniper or an expert with knives, but just still having them grounded in some reality. That way you have a North Star to look to for that character, to try to give everybody their own background and reason and motivation. And another thing, maybe not the best financial decision on our part, but what we're doing is having a backup in each story, in each issue, 3, 4, 5 pages, something like that, to give every member of the team a little extra time to shine outside of the main issue and give them a little insight into the origin.
Like the old school, character cards.
Yeah, except more expensive. But we're actually doing that too. One of our Kickstarter rewards on the first campaign, an homage to the G.I. Joe file cards.
Yeah,
I did a bookmarks instead. So you get a giant bookmark, and it has a little picture, and then it has bio for that character. And we did 4 of those for the first issue, and we'll probably do 3 for the second issue, and then another 3 for the third issue. And then you fill out the team with their bios. So I thought that's kind of
really
fun,
cool.
and it's a different way to expose the team. So we're working on giving everybody time to shine through different methods.
And it's also, that's a money saving tactic right there, because bookmarks are cheaper than words on the page.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They were quick with that one. Yes. But let's build this creator-owned universe. So one thing we talk about quite a bit here is the freedom that comes with creator-owned comics. There's no editorial mandates, no existing continuity, and no corporate playbook that says you have to build everything a certain way. With that freedom, though, also comes responsibility. I had to get my Spider-Man thing in. How much planning went into the larger Collision Force universe before ever putting issue 1 out to the masses and kickstarting it? Did you already know kind of where the story was heading? Or has this roadmap evolved as you go now into this issue 2 Kickstarter? And Joe, I'll start that with you.
Jarrod's mentioned that we have a map for the series about how we want to go, but we actually did pivot for the second issue from what we had originally planned. We were going to go with kind of adding some new members to the team, doing a bunch of training, but we said, screw it. Let's do something crazy instead and have a bunch of communists attack their headquarters and blow a bunch of stuff up. And that's what we did instead. And
it's a bold move. That's a bold move.
And we were able to find ways that was an interesting pivot, because it was going to be more of a building out the story from where the first one left off. But then as we're halfway through writing the second one, like, man, it's not living up to part one at all.
Mm-hmm.
We need to go in and just bad boys to this and just go crazy. And then we'll find a way to get the same story beats that we're going to get and cram it in there. And we were able to do it. And then we added a little more of a little more revelations from the team's past, and we sped it up where that revelation came in. It was fun. It's moving everything around, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with what we ended up with, and that's our mantra, you know. We just got to keep on trucking, you know.
I like that kind of stuff. I know I had a guest on not that long ago. His comic book he wrote originally as a novel. The first issue one of that comic book is like basically the first chapter of his novel, but he completely pivoted on issue two as well. Like, it's not even a part of the novel. It was just like, hey, I want to explore this one thing. And then I'm like, I see, you make a roadmap, but that roadmap's got a lot of twists and turns and curves and everything else in it. And I love hearing the flex that comes with this, because it's yours.
Yeah.
There's nobody saying you can't do it.
Yeah. And you're making the choice. Like, you know, you're spin the wheel, make the deal. Right, Joe?
100%. You know, and it's one kind of interesting little point to, you brought up, Jeff, about novel to comic. You know, Jarrod's done screenplays. I've written the screenplay, nothing produced like him though. You know, we've both written, short stories, maybe a piece of a novel here or there. And whatever you write doesn't prepare you for comic books. Comic books are completely different. And I think that's something a lot of indie creators don't know until you do it, and then you examine your medium. And it's interesting. It's I mean, I'll be honest, it's somewhat of a challenge we face with our second issue, and it's something that we'll work on more for issue 3, is that you get the urge of, you want to put in so much, and then you realize, oh no, if I put in so much, then I'm going to lose something else. If I put in text, well, then that hides your art. Or you put in too much, like each action, that's 7 panels on a page, and then some of your art may not have enough room to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a challenge for us with issue 2 that we wanted to do a lot. And whenever we eventually get to issue 3, we learned some good lessons, and we'll let things breathe a little bit more. But it's kind of just part of the process of, wow, there's a lot to learn about making comic books.
It definitely is. And I learned something new and different, like every single time I have new creators on, in just how they do business, or how they go about their Kickstarters or writing their stories. Jarrod, I know you've wrote a movie that came out in 2025, I think it was.
Yeah, in December.
So in getting those cool stories like that, this is always so much fun for me, because I'm also too wanting to write a book or comic, and I'm like, yeah, this is always cool. I'm like, as I watch these episodes back and I cut clips and I cut long form content out of them, I'm like, I focus on those big nuggets and those lessons learned. And I'm not just doing it for like the masses. I'm soaking that in. As I'm watching these, I take a notepad out and I make notes like constantly. I got notebooks of notes, and it's like almost like an obsession almost, where I'm just like notes.
You have the call of the wild, man. It's calling you.
It is, and it has been for a hot minute now. That's one of the other reasons why my schedule is going to slow down later this year. It's because I do want to focus on writing that book. But this is my boy right here, Kelvin, with a question. How do you manage continuing the story when so many fresh ideas come up that may not contribute? It's a good question.
I'd say when you have too many ideas, like the really good ones, you just put them on the shelf, man. Like, and come back to the next issue. Like, a great idea is a great idea. You don't want to waste a great idea just cramming it in with all the other ones. Space it out. If it's a good idea, it's going to be good in the next issue.
What are your thoughts, Joe?
Yeah, sometimes I'll have wild ideas, and running past Jarrod of like, hey man, I know we can't do this right now in this next issue, but sometime down the line, let's do this. Let's do this homage cover, or I want to fit in this crazy action beat, whatever it is. Absolutely. I mean, like you're saying, Jeff, keep a notebook. Keep a file of like, okay, guy is doing something crazy with, and then here's an explosion and a helicopter and whatever it is, that you come up with.
Helicopters and explosions go so well together.
They do.
Yes.
No, this is how I do it, right? School rolls around in August, July, school supplies go out. I get my good pens that I like, the Sharpie pens, and I get the good notebooks when school supplies hit the shelf at a discount, and I just like buy my supply for the year.
That's great.
Do it.
Yeah. I hit when Amazon puts theirs on sale too. I'm like, oh, that's my favorite notebook right there. Let me get that.
Well, yeah, where you're interviewing so many great artists too. Probably.
I am.
Now you have in your backlog, and where all the hot indie artists are.
Artists. Well, I have an artist pit, like close friend of mine. Like we become friends. We've done like shows outside. Well, still talking about comic books, but like me and him do our annual Halloween comic book special together, and great dude. He does the art for the comic book version of Vitellarium, which is a novel by Nicholas Caspero, another great dude. But yeah, when I got the first issue of Vitellarium, the comic book, I was like, dude, I love this art. Like the way he does his sci-fi type stuff. And I was like, dude, this is so good. And I was like, yeah, I got to have this guy. And like, it just immediately, I was like, hey, one day I'm going to write a comic book. Will you be my artist? And he was like, I would love to. I was like, cool. That part's the hard part. So I got it down.
What a blessing.
He's Argentinian, great dude. I don't know if you've seen Starship Troopers. Of course. It's Argentina, and one of his. We always like anytime I message him, I always start out with, "Hey, I'm doing my part," like from Starship Troopers. With the little kid, he gets out of lines like, "I'm doing my part." Yeah, so that's a normal thing down there. That's a greeting down there. I swear. At least that's what he told me. He could have been fucking with me, but. But it's just one of my favorite stories. I want to believe that one because it's so good. Now, if I ever go to Argentina and if I say that and if they look at me and be like, this motherfucker, I'm like, all right, well played, my friend. But I just mentioned, Jarrod, that you do work in screenwriting. You wrote a movie, came out December 2025, which is really dope. If you ever want to come back and talk about that movie, by all means, we can do that. Or I can set you up with Nightmares and Nerdscapes. He does horror movies. So
hey man, the movie's called Pig Hill. It's a very dark and twisted horror movie. I'm proud of it.
Oh, that's up our alleys.
Yeah, it's got some heat. Some people are angry about it, but I'm okay with that. If someone watches it, digs it, wants to talk about it, I'm available 24/7, just like I am for anyone who loves Collision Force.
No, I'll put him in contact with you.
Thanks.
I get hit up all the time. With like, hey, will you watch my movie? I'm like, I ain't got time right now, but let me push you over to my guy. And I'll always push him over to CJ and Nightmares and Nerdscapes. I would highly check him out if you're a big horror guy. He's got a great thing going over there. But I'm going somewhere with this, I swear. Screenwriting immediately stood out to me because film, comic books tell stories, but in very different ways, even though they're both visual mediums. What were some of the biggest adjustments you had to make when writing for comics instead of film? And I know you were writing stories before this, but what were some of those adjustments you had to make?
I would say as a screenwriter, you have to be kind of relaxed in how you describe the action. You have to make it very readable. Make it all the dialogue flow with the action lines, and there's kind of a little art to it so the reader doesn't get bored. But you can't have that when you're doing these comic book scripts. You have to think of the panels. You have to kind of get into unless you're doing it the Marvel way, which that's not how we do it. You have to almost become like, you get into God mode, and think of the panels split. You got to make sure the artist is cool with it, and you have to have a lot more control over it than you do as a screenwriter. Screenwriters, it's a lot more fluid, and the director's going to come in and he's going to do his thing, or how he wants the cameras to be and whatnot. With as a writer, you have to be in there more. You have to think of how the panels collide with each other, the spatial economics of everything. That's been a big thing, and I know Joe definitely experiences this when he's coming in the collision force world.
Yeah, it's a interesting balancing act of how well do you know your artist, and
it's literally my next question. That was perfect.
Yeah, and how much detail do you give? You want to have your artist breathe, but you also want to make sure that there's not misinterpretations, and that the artist is getting across your point. So, and fortunately and unfortunately, we've had two different great artists for both of our issues. First issue was Chris Johnson. He's done some work for Image, some work for IDW, and we were so lucky to have him that he kind of guided us through the process as somebody with real experience and willing to work with us. Jarrod had met him at a local comic book store that he was working with, and for him, he ended up doing a book for Image after working with us, and also just didn't have time to do our second issue. So we found another artist, JC Grand from El Salvador, and he's been awesome. Has that kind of 90s throwback style that we enjoy. But still there's just things that we were on different pages, so we had to clear them up. And you don't want to tell your artist the wrong thing or making assumptions.
Yeah.
You also don't want to be overly controlling. So it's really an interesting balance that you have to take. And even the coloring, we worked with a few different colorists based on availability, and that matters too. I mean, coloring is huge.
Big time.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure
with a lot of explosions.
And blood.
A lot of explosions. Blood. And then, what's really the thing is you have 7 team members. Well, guess what? Everybody looks a little different, has different hair color and, different skin color. So you have to be cognizant of that. And you have, be aware, like, oh, this guy's hair color is wrong. It needs to be this. It takes a lot of effort. We were also very lucky to have a letterer and designer, Amal Desai. He's done both of our issues, and he's really help of, like, hey, this is how you lay out a comic. Because, hey, guess what? Whenever you create a comic, even if you don't have any letters on a page, well, that page still needs to be set up and designed so it can be printed. And that was, I didn't know that. I thought, here it is. The art's ready to go. Boom.
Yeah.
And he guided us through that process and has been a huge help along the way. And that's a very fun part of creating a comic, is you have so many people. And then we also, for our backup art, we have a fella out of Brazil, Felipe Gomez, and he did his first US story with us in the first issue, and then his second story with us on the second issue, and his art improved, which was, it got sharper and clearer and more focused, and he had better action. But a great part about collaborating with him was, like we did this, we have this scene and there's a sword fight, and he goes, I just made this change where this guy gets his hand cut off because I think it would be cooler. Hey, you're right.
Always.
So, it's kind of cool when you have those kinds of collaborations and your artist just does something like, wow, I didn't think about that. That's way better.
I like that kind of stuff. That's cool. And just having that creative freedom to do that kind of stuff is really cool. So when y'all are collaborating together, how do y'all balance like each other's strengths? I know people just naturally sometimes, or you hear like even for a bromance as strong as yours, sometimes you're going to butt heads. Like, how do y'all kind of balance that and keep that focus on like the story and getting, this thing completed?
For me, it's just focusing on how can the story be the best. It's not about who's winning, between Jarrod and I based on this guy's idea goes in versus this guy's idea. It's what's the better idea and what is going to be the best for the story. We did talk for a ridiculously long time on our backup story for this issue, maybe even longer than the main story. But that's because we're passionate about it. We want it to be cool.
I love to hear that. Like just the bro stories behind the scenes are so much funner sometimes than the actual book. And that's what's so fun about getting to do this is you get those kinds of stories. And like you spent what? How long did it take y'all to put together issue 2?
Probably about somewhere between 7 to 9 months for the writing and the art and the colors. As of right now, the book is completely done. Art, colors, letters. We're going to launch the Kickstarter in early August. The only thing that'll be left to do is maybe we'll tweak something just based on Kickstarter pledges.
Yeah.
But other than that, we're done. So this one took a while, but not as long as issue 1.
Yeah.
How about the backup story?
That one took a couple months.
Yeah.
So we were wondering if we were going to do it again, and then we just had to do it because Felipe he's a rising star, and I have no doubt in the future he's going to blow up because he has been just his skill level is just he's maxing out like in jumping. Mm-hmm. Every time we see his new work, it's just blowing up. We've been very blessed with the art. I mean, JC is established in the indie scene. Chris is doing his stuff in Image, and we've just been blessed in that way. And somehow Joe found Felipe, and Felipe has just been it's really made these backups fun.
And we found our colorist. We had a primary colorist, Jorge Suto, who's done work. He does a lot of work for Dynamite. He did our coloring for the first issue and wasn't available for the second. He did the colors on the variant cover though for the second issue. And then we found a fellow named Pedro Stuco, also out of Brazil. He did the backup colors in the first issue, the primary colors in the second issue, and we were blown away by them. And then I went to him and said, hey, can you do the colors on the backup? He's like, nah, I'm working for Image now.
Peasant, how dare you approach me?
Yeah,
there's so many great artists in South America as a whole. There's so many talented artists down there.
Yeah, and he's so good. He's working on the new Bad Rock series. He's also going to do some DC books. So we're so happy.
It just come out last week.
Yeah.
So if someone's going to take him, let it be Rob Liefeld, the big dog, the big man.
Yeah. Trust me, I was at the LCS last week, and I'm trying to pick out which covers I want, and I'm like, ooh, I like that one.
Yes.
Like, damn, I like that one too.
Yes.
You know what? I'm getting them all. I don't know if I'll go back for issue 2 because it's lab filled, and everybody has their opinions on the guy. Personally, I like his stuff, but I have to be really into it to go back for issue 2. And to me, he's, I don't know. You either love his stuff or you don't love his stuff. I'm somewhere really nicely tucked in the middle. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. I'm going to hopefully have a chance to read it this weekend, and hopefully I'm going to be like, yeah, no, we're coming back for issue 2 on this one. So
yeah, man, come back. Are you talking about the artist for issue 2 or for Bad Rock or the
Bad Rock? Yeah.
Or are you talking about Rob?
Rob, yeah.
I'm 100% loyalist to Rob Liefeld. I love him, and I definitely see I've dealt with this my entire life as a comic book fan, as a Rob Liefeld fan, where I go into comic book stores, and this is me as an 11-year-old, and the guy behind the counter would try to dissuade me from buying, or like, why are you doing it? I'm like, I love it. I love Prophet. I love Youngblood. I love all this.
Same.
And so it's like, why? Like, but it doesn't stop. I don't understand it. It's like, it's one thing not to take someone, but to try to persuade people against someone. It makes no sense to me. And there are comic communities I've been a part of where it's just like there are people who are just obsessed with hating him, and it's like, let it go. Like,
I don't even hate him.
No, yeah, no.
I just like to make fun of the fact he's never been able to draw feet. Everything else looks perfect, but there's going to be a rock in front of one of those feet. Yeah,
like it's the energy of it. Like what I love his personality too. But it's just weird to have like I'm not a big Crumb guy, but if people are talking up Crumb, I'm not gonna like jump in there and be like, well, what's your problem with her, or try to rage bait people on. It's just weird that he's a very good ambassador to the art form.
Yeah,
he loves comic books, and we need more people like that, and pushing in the mainstream, just showing why you love comics, having a love for history. I don't understand why. And even recently, I came back home in December to go to the local, like the comic book store, and I was going to pick up a new Youngblood. The guy gave me all this grief and started screaming, why are you buying this? Like, what am I, 11 years old? It never stops. These guys behind the counter need to let it go.
Yeah.
But I love Rob, all my heart and soul. And
I loved his episode, that show Stan Lee used to do where he'd have up and coming artists and stuff on the show. And the episode he had with young Rob on there was like amazing.
Yeah, he's great in that, man. I love that episode too.
And then I think that was, I can't remember if it was the same episode or a different episode, like around the same time frame. He had Todd McFarlane on, and it wasn't that long after that they started Image.
The Todd father, man. He's another one. I love McFarlane so much too.
And my giant vinyl Spawn versus Batman with Greg Capullo and Todd McFarlane is currently in the closet, but eventually it's going to be like right there on that wall. It just kind of varies. Like, however I decide to change my desk when I redesign is like, okay, it's going to be like right there now.
Yes.
But yeah, it's the nice ass like vinyl poster that the comic shops got for it. And my LCS had the paper poster. I was like, dude, you got to get me that poster, man. He's like, I'll see what I can do, man. I ain't making you no promises. And we got one of those. That's just our relationship. That's how we are with each other. And I was like, all right, man, but hey, if you can get me something or something like that, just let me know, dude. I'll pay you for it. It's whatever. Like 2 weeks later, I went back in on a New Comic Book Day, and he's like, hey, I got you something. And he pulled it out of a box. I was like, why is it in a box, man? And he turns it over, and I was like, oh, seriously, dude, is that vinyl? He's like, yeah, this is the really, really good stuff. I'm like, are you fucking with me right there? Is that mine? He's like, no, this one's yours. I'm like, oh. Like a kid, like that 11-year-old all over again. The first time I seen Spawn on the cover, I was like, this is so cool. I immediately came home and I got on Amazon, bought a big ass frame for it, and it's been around this office like in several different spots. There's a hole right there. There's a hole over there where it's hung on the wall. I'm like, eventually I got to plug those holes up, but
that's beautiful. Now here's a question for you. We were blessed.
There we go.
With the OG Image guys. We got to throw some love on Shadowhawk, the spine snapper. Love Shadowhawk, and I think he deserves a little more love. Yeah, Jason.
I think that whole area right there deserves more love.
Yes, we were blessed to grow up in that era.
We really were, and it gave us that perfect alternative to all the X-Men and the Batman that were coming out. I swear there'd be like 4 different X-Men or X-Force that would drop, and then there would be like a handful of Image, but that Image stuff just in my head is still so ingrained with it.
Now I saw the comment. We gotta talk it up. JC Grande, the artist of issue 2, is a great man. His artwork is amazing, dynamic, and definitely of that era, the extreme era. He lives and breathes. We love him. Joe found him. How'd you find JC, Joe?
I found him on Facebook. You know, like a lot of the talent that I've met, and I just saw JC's art one day. I'm like, I need this guy, and he did an alternate cover for us, and then he did some pinups for us on the first issue, and then we picked him up for the art and the cover on the second issue, and we had the chance to talk to him before we started the second issue. And he's just such a cool guy. Loves metal, loves comic books. Like, what more do you need?
It's hand in hand, right? Metal, hardcore action comics with lots of explosions. It's like match made in heaven right there.
Yes.
And it's called Collision Force. It sounds like a bad 80s movie full of action with a washed up action star.
The best.
Exactly. It's like the kind of stuff I like. You catch out on TBS at like 10:30 at night, and you're like, "Oh, I haven't seen this since I was like 10." And you're not going to the TV.
And I gotta say, there's no better name than JC Grande.
Dude, that is a name right there.
That is a name. I love it.
That is a damn good name. But let's crowdfund this thing and build an audience. Why don't we? So launching a comic is one thing. Building a community that believes in your vision enough to come to back it is something entirely different. You successfully funded Collision Force number 1. You're now back for Collision Force number 2. Looking back at that first Kickstarter campaign, what's the biggest lesson you learned that completely changed the way you approach launching this issue? And Joe, we can start with you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, we learned a lot with. Well, here's the lesson: Kickstarting is hard, and it's real work to build an audience. And Jarrod and I kind of played off each other's strengths for our first campaign, where I would be, in Canva making social media design posts. He'd go ahead, blast it out. We both engage. So it was really helpful that I'm not doing it all, he's not doing it all. We're helping each other. We're have a common goal in mind. We're coming up with new rewards. Jarrod had the killer idea that we would have, you could be the president in the Collision Force universe for a princely sum. And luckily, somebody backed that who knows Jarrod. And now he's the president in the Collision Force universe. We had a bunch of...
What's the life expectancy in the Collision Force universe for a president?
We promised him that, my friend and now Joe's friend and soon to be your friend, a man named Zeffy Daniel, who...
Oh, that's a name right there.
Yeah, who was formerly known as Woody Keith. He wrote the film Society. I don't know if you ever saw Society in the 80s, Bride of Reanimator.
I have seen that one.
Yeah, and some other ones of Brian Yuzna. Zeph is a true icon, a very cool person. And then when we made this tier in the Kickstarter for the president, he jumped on it. And he's like, you didn't think anyone else was going to be the president, in the Collision Force universe. And then we allowed, he came up with the name President Drill, which is perfect. So the president of the Collision Force.
That's a 90s image name right there, if I ever heard one.
President Drill. And then he has a partner of his at Crazed House Pictures, who is the director of Crazed House, Larry Carroll, and he's the vice president of the Collision Force universe, named Dr. Bacardi. And and then Zeph's wife, Trish, is known as Tanya Drill. So it's a very cool. And President Drill is now like a totally dynamic. He might make it more than 6 issues.
Nice.
Yeah, we also had rewards for getting killed in issue number 2 as like a henchman or a villain or kind of one of those background players on the Collision Force side. And a lesson there is we learned that 8 people in an issue, like with distinct likenesses, is too many to kill. Yeah. So don't do that if you're kickstarting a comic, unless it's longer than like 22 or 23 pages.
That's a great lesson.
It is.
Especially because everybody I've talked to who's ever done something like that in their Kickstarter, it's gone immediately almost.
Yeah, and so for the next issue, we're gonna do it too, but we're gonna chop down that number a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for the next one, we're gonna have it be that it's not the character is bigger. So the characters are gonna be, or not just a kill. You're gonna be in it for a bit. So we're reweighting it, recalibrating it, and it's definitely like an incredible gimmick, you know.
It is, and it always does well in almost every Kickstarter I've seen it in. So sometimes it's a last minute, and somebody's like, "Ooh, that's still available," or they're waiting it out to see. Like, if that's not here by this day, I'm going to get that. And then if it's still there, they jump right on it.
Yeah, we had to open it up because the tier did get snatched up. We're probably halfway through, right, Joe?
Yeah.
And then we added a couple more, and then we added the president, and then they all got snatched up. Thank God.
Yeah, that's something that we did learn on the first campaign is you have to be agile. If things are changing, well, go ahead and change. Offer something new. Offer something additional, and we'll do that for the second campaign as well.
Flexibility, man.
Yeah.
When I was in the Air Force, they taught me flexibility was the key to air power. I have since applied that lesson to podcasting, and it works the same way. And I guess it also works the same way for comic book creating as well.
Yes.
But so crowdfunding isn't just about asking for support, it's earning their trust. How have you worked to build that relationship with the reader between campaigns, and why has their feedback meant to the evolution of the series? And Jarrod, we'll start with you on that one.
I think the most important thing that we do in the past, you know, we only have 2 campaigns, but is that we have the issue already created. And so
that's a huge one right there. I hear that one almost every time I talk to somebody.
I would say if you could make sure it's created. And so that way, Joe handled the delivery, which was impeccable. And we had everything ready to go as soon as the Kickstarter was finished. Joe had them out. Everyone got their packages with no issues, and they got it really quick. So I would say just be ready, have it done, and then deliver as soon as you can, and don't leave people hanging.
And don't screw around with sending out comics. Do Gemini mailers.
Gemini mailers, pads and boards. I'm begging everybody out there. The amount of books I get not bagged and board and not in Geminis drives me insane. I love the cool packaging sometimes. Like, oh, that's very much like this. That's on par for this person in this book. It's so cool. But I would rather get it in a brown Gemini mailer and a bag and a board, please. And if you need bags and boards, please visit BCW. Use my code USDN, and you will get 10% off your order.
I might take you up on that for issue 2.
I appreciate that. I haven't plugged it like that before. That was fucking amazing. Holy cow! Appreciate that.
Nice plug.
That was a good setup too. Wow.
Yeah, but that's so key though, because I've backed campaigns and like really, you don't back and board this, or you don't put it in Gemini. It's just in like some 2 little pieces of cardboard or an envelope.
Yeah. Dude, I've received comments in so many different ways.
Kickstarter, that's one thing I look at the Kickstarter as. It's a premium price. Our comic is $10 or so, right?
$15 to ship in. If I'm paying $15 in shipping, please give me a Gemini.
Yeah, you're going to pay. I mean, the shipping costs are outrageous now, and they keep going up, which is harsh, but it's life. So shipping you're paying $10 for comic, you're paying $7, $8 for shipping. Make it a Gemini, make sure they get the comic right. And in the end, it's going to save you money that people aren't going to complain and say, oh, my book was folded, there's creases in it and you have to resend it. No, do it right, make the customer happy.
Goes back to building trust.
Yeah.
So, dude, I like it. I like you guys. Y'all all right. But it was great because last night I made the social media post, and Joe, thank you for getting me all that stuff. And it was like immediately started getting lit up all throughout the day. Every time I would go check my phone, it was like likes, comments. I was like, dude, this is awesome. These guys are coming in with their own audience. The people are eating it up. I'm like, I like this kind of stuff. So, but this is my next favorite segment that I like to do, is that's just to talk about the state of indie comics. And oh, by the way, before we get too far into this segment, early August launch. Do you have a date yet?
Not yet. It's going to be early mid-August.
Okay.
And then making sure we're not ending anywhere near Labor Day.
Yeah, the tricky part is we used Comic Wellspring for our first book, and they were great.
They were fantastic, and they're closing their doors was just that was a shock across the community. Everybody was just like, "What the hell just happened?"
That hurt.
Yeah, and even before they closed, I ordered like all of our swag from there, like posters, bookmarks, all this cool stuff. And
they were a one-stop shop, man. That's going to be hard to replicate.
Yeah, but they weren't offering that anymore. So like, oh geez, I got to order from at least a couple different vendors. So that's a reason we were planning on a June launch, and it slipped because the Comic Wellspring, we were both doing some traveling, but in the end, it's going to make it better that the book is completely done. It's going to be ready to roll as soon as the Kickstarter campaign is done. We get paid. We're going to rock. So we're looking probably somewhere, first or second week of August to launch, and we'll be good to go.
If anybody is interested, that link is always down in the description to that Kickstarter campaign. So make sure you hit that link, hit notify me on launch. That way you get notified when this goes live.
Yes, please do that. We need more followers.
It works great for them, because the more followers they have going into the launch of the campaign, the more Kickstarter will also push their campaign to the front page of Kickstarter when you open it up. Also, so make sure to hit that notify me button.
Yeah, I think the ideal is to be over 100, and we're not close. So please help us, everyone. Please.
I can't remember if I did, which reminds me, after the show, I'm going to make sure I hit that button.
Thanks.
But, oh, dude, I got to get this. I mean, that many explosions and easy, no brainer. But one of the things I love about independent comics is the creators aren't waiting for permission. They build their own universes, find their own audience, and proven there's room for stories that may not exist at the larger publishers. From your perspective, what excites you the most about the independent comic scene right now, and where do you think there's still room for creators to push the medium even further? And Joe, I'll start with you on that one.
I love indie comics. I hardly buy anything from Marvel or DC, basically like Punisher, maybe an occasional Batman. I'm buying Image, I'm buying Mad Cave, I'm buying Dark Horse, Massive, Bad Idea. I mean, if I don't care who publishes it, if the story looks cool, I'm going to give it a shot. Yeah. And the nice thing about indies is you can get everything. You want to read a horror comic? Great. You can go to
EC Comics.
I mean, you can't really get a horror comic from DC that much. You can go
every Halloween.
Yeah,
that's about it.
You can go to some of the indies and you get it. You can get whatever genre you want at an indie that's just not available at a mainstream comic. I mean, it's not an indie property, but Conan is killing it at Titan Comics.
Dude, Titan is killing it, period.
And Gun Honey is crazy. If you've ever read that.
I was about to say that new issue of Gun Honey that dropped today, the covers on that thing, phenomenal. Like, the art is out of this world, just amazing. The realism. I know they have a cosplay cover this month as well on that one, but just the phenomenal covers on that book this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically kind of like a female James Bond.
Yeah,
just crazy action, and it was just a brand new universe, a brand new character.
Yep, and it's a new Gun Honey for this season, or for this. Gun Honey's a code name like 007 for people out there.
Yeah, it's just a wild book, and they're been a successful spinoff. So indie you can just do whatever you want, and that's what's appealing to me. I read Kickstarters, you buy indie comics, anything I can get my hands on, I read. And the potential for indie comics that I would say hasn't been tapped in America is just more genres, like in manga, where in manga, if you want to read a comic about basketball, you can.
Volleyball,
baseball, volleyball, boxing.
Yeah.
My wife grew up reading manga. That's where she learned about sports from, not from actually watching them, but from the mangas. And that's I'd say like what I would like to see in America. It's just maybe opening up the genres even further. But I'm very happy about the state of indie comics right now.
Jarrod, what you think?
Yeah, I would say growing up, I was much more of a traditionalist with Marvel, DC, and then Image. And then, still doing that. And then, like I was saying, with the, I don't know if you remember the cartoonist kayfabe with Ed Piskor and Jim Rugg. Both those guys are from Pittsburgh, shout out. And really opened me up to the whole indie world. I'll say like stuff like Grimjack back in the day. That was
a good one.
Yeah, and they had me, hunt these down on eBay and just stack them up and go through and John Sable, all these wild adventures, and really opened me up. And then whenever Ed had the Red Room, that really made me look like all the stuff you could do on the indie circuit. Yeah, I was like, all right, maybe this is the racket. And then soon afterwards, Joe hit me up and I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Man, like no rules, no law. And I'll always have a lot of love for Ed, and God bless him,
So I'm probably going to drop an episode of what I'm calling From the Chairman's Desk this week, just as a trial run. But I'm going to put it out there now. Ani Press, EC Comics, Ignition Press, Bad Idea, The Keen Spot. All of those guys have come into their own within the last 18 months to 2 years with original IPs that are just absolutely just bangers. It has been phenomenal. And Bad Idea and Ignition, their books feel like old school comic newspapers that you would get into the fun, on Sunday morning, from your Sunday morning paper. You'd pull out the comic section, how that paper felt.
Yeah, it's newsprint. That's what
newsprint
is on newsprint. It's wild.
Yeah, and it's amazing, the smell of that. It reminds me of childhood, reading those funnies out of the Sunday paper. That's what it reminds me of every time those books come out. And dude, their IPs have just been killing it. Their stories, their art, amazing. That's my plug for them. Sorry.
Love it, man.
But no, they have me so excited. They are just killing it. I know Dark Horse took a small break, I felt like, for a couple of weeks there, where they just didn't have nothing on the shelf. And then they come out with some bangers of horror. And I was just like, bro. And then, of course, their Star Wars stuff is always great because it's the Old Republic stuff or in the New Republic stuff. Those stories are phenomenal.
Tales of the Jedi. You remember Tales of the Jedi?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Those. Yeah. I was so into that as a kid. All the
I think right there, Star Wars Adventures, right there. IDW number 1, 9.8.
How about Dark Empire?
It's in a box in the other room down there.
That stuff was nightmare fuel, man. I loved it. That was like these. And
then the Star Wars Visions, the stuff that Peach Momoko did, phenomenal stuff as well. Yes. No words, just beautiful art to tell a story. So, but for someone watching tonight who's been sitting on an idea for years, but keeps telling themselves, I'm not ready, what would you say to encourage them to finally take that step? And Jarrod, I'll kick that one to you first.
You are ready. Do it.
Right there. What about you, Joe?
Start writing tonight. You can write, if you write one sentence, one paragraph, one page, it's all progress.
Yeah,
if I'm telling you, you're never going to get there.
You put that first sentence on the paper, your hand's just going to start magically doing it. because that's just how your head works. If you're already there and you just start, you put that first sentence down here, I'm like, ooh, and then this, and then this. That's how it started for me when my idea popped in my head. I was like, let me write this down real quick. And then it was like 30 pages into my notebook. By the time I realized, I was like, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I think I should probably get ready for bed. And, I got work in the morning. So, and I still catch myself doing it. So, but let's look ahead. Collision Force clearly feels like more than just a 2-issue project. It's feeling like there's a big ass universe behind this with long-term ambitions. As creators, where do you see Collision Force a few years from now? Is the goal to continue telling these stories issue by issue, expand into graphic novels, or explore other opportunities with this IP outside of comics? And Joe, I'll start with you.
Well, so far we're at an issue a year. We want to pick up that pace, and we were hoping for
those are rookie numbers, baby. Yeah, pick them up.
Yeah, right. We were hoping for 2 issues this year, and just realistically, that's not going to happen. But that's our goal for next year. 2 issues, get that cooking, and you see where it goes from there. Jarrod?
Yeah, we have much grander plans for Collision Force, but we need to secure the fan base. We need to find our tribe, and we need them to love us. And we'll keep this rolling. We'll make it faster. We'll crank it out as fast as we can, as fast as we're allowed to. And it's going to be awesome. Trust us.
Dude, I love that answer. I love it. Beyond Collision Force, are there any other stories or projects that each of you hopes to bring to life once this current campaign is behind you? Or are you going to go from Collision Force 2 to Collision Force 3, which I hope is the answer?
Yeah, I mean, comic book wise, yes. Collision Force is my world and is Joe's world, and that's my sole focus in the comic book world. Joe's got some other stuff planned too, and I think we got a lot of stuff cooking. And on the movie front, I have a few things that might be happening soon. So
ooh,
look out.
I like it. But before I wrap it up, no, Joe, go ahead.
I was going to say real quick, had some stories cooking in my head for a while, and I got to get them out. So it's going to be more of the same.
Dude, I feel that, and I know I got to get my schedule squished down before I can really commit my mind to doing that. So I'm right there with you on that one. But we're going to start wrapping this up, and I always like to give our guests the opportunity to speak directly to the audience. And if there's anything that we haven't covered tonight or something that you want to express that I didn't cover, Joe, I'll give you the chance now to do that.
Yeah, we're hopeful that people check out Collision Force, follow it on Kickstarter, back it when the time comes. We promise it's just fun action comic. A lot of crazy stuff going on. We try to ramp up we're going to try to ramp up the action each issue, and come along for the ride with us. It's going to be fun.
Jarrod, down to you.
If you missed the 80s or you missed the 90s and those wild action movies, we're here for you, and we're going to deliver. And we have 2 issues proving that. And this is over-the-top madness, no irony. These characters are dear to us. The action we unleash is essential to us. So please seek us out wherever you can, which is Kickstarter right now and on our socials. And please, if you dig us, keep following us. And we promise it's just going to get crazier and better.
I like the way you put that. Joe, where can everybody find your work on the socials?
You can find us at Collision Force, Facebook.com, Collision Force, X.com, Collision Force X, Instagram, Collision Force. We even are on Blue Sky. Why not? So we're out there on the socials. Also, if you go to collisionforce.net, that just takes you right to the Kickstarter. Nice and easy, collisionforce.net.
Jarrod?
So yeah, you find us all, and Joe's got a IG handle. I just created my IG last year for the first Collision Force campaign, and then that was nice because then the movie came out, so I was able to promote Pig Hill on my IG as well. So that's my IG is Jarrod Allen Burris, and I think Joe, you're JJ Kazmer.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm JJ Kazmer on Instagram and Joe Kazmer on Facebook and Twitter.
So yeah,
And
please.
confirm.
Yeah, so please follow that. And if you like our vibe, maybe you'll like the movie I wrote, Pig Hill. And if you could find that on IG, it's Pig Hill Movie. It's streaming for free on Amazon Prime. So cue us up. And if you love us, please give us a great review. We got review bombed out of Turkey and Russia and Iran in February, and it sunk us. And
Holy shit, guys.
So if we could get some organic payback, if you love the movie, please give us a good review. And then if not, just forget about it. But please don't give us a bad review. And Collision Force is going to keep on rolling, man. And Lars Bowman has a lot of story left to tell. And I think you guys are going to love it.
Dude, I love it. And all those links that they mentioned are down in the description right now. And when this goes live later again, or actually when I update the description of this with the chapters, I will make sure and double check all those links are down below. With that, Joe, Jarrod, thank you both for spending some time with us tonight. Always a pleasure to sit down with creators who are passionate about telling original stories and building something of their own. If you enjoyed tonight's conversation, make sure you check out the Collision Force #2 Kickstarter using the links down in the description below. Follow Joe, Jarrod, and the Rowdy Bronco creative team on social media. And if you believe in supporting independent comics, this is exactly the kind of project that deserves your attention because it has a fuck ton of explosions. If you enjoyed this interview, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you ring that notification bell so you never miss another conversation with the incredible creators shaping the future of independent comics. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been the USDN Podcast, where indie comics come to life. Ladies and gentlemen, the council is now adjourned. Y'all be safe out there.
It's a trap!